This happened 8 years ago. I went back to my childhood home to help my parents. They were downsizing, and I knew the old house had a lot of memories. It felt strange to be back there. The walls seemed to breathe with all the things they had seen. On my first day, I climbed up to the attic. The air was stuffy, and I coughed from the dust. I opened boxes filled with old clothes and toys. Then, near the back, I found a stack of my old sketchbooks. They were covered in dust, and I felt a rush of nostalgia that I opened the first one and was shocked. I didn't remember drawing any of it. The pages showed strange faces and odd scenes that made me uncomfortable. My heart raced as I flipped through them. One drawing stood out. It showed a figure standing in a dark room, almost staring back at me. I shivered. Suddenly, I heard a noise from downstairs. It sounded like a thud. I hesitated, then went to check. The house was quiet. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but I felt unsettled. Days went by, and I kept looking at the drawings. They seemed different or maybe more alive. Some showed twisted scenes I couldn't understand. I kept them secret from my parents. What if they revealed things we didn't want to face? That night, as I lay in bed, I heard whispers. They were soft but clear. My heart raced, and I pulled the blankets tighter. I wanted to convince myself it was the house settling. Each night, the whispers seemed to get closer, almost like a voice trying to reach me. The next day, I found that a cup I left on the kitchen table was gone. I searched the house high and low. Eventually, I found it in the attic, right next to the sketchbooks. Why would I take it up there? My stomach twisted with worry. I felt chills creep up my spine. Maybe it was just my imagination. But each sketch I drew became stranger, and new figures appeared overnight. Every time I traced a line, I felt dizzy. I wanted to show my parents, but what if they didn't want to talk about it? That night, I sat down with one of the sketchbooks. As I drew, I heard my name clearly spoken. I froze. I looked around, expecting to see my parents, but the hallway was empty. I felt bone-deep cold wash over me. I didn't know what to do next. Maybe I should just leave. But something kept pulling me in. The whispers grew louder, echoing in my mind. I felt like I was caught in a web. I couldn't leave, not yet. I needed answers. As I stared at the pages, I wondered what was hiding in my own past and whether the house was trying to tell me something. I didn't want to know, but I felt I had to. What happens next? I still don't know, but I was definitely not alone anymore. The next day, my curiosity got the better of me. I decided to visit the local library, thinking maybe I'd find something that explained the drawings or the whispers. I took the old sketchbook with me, hoping that seeing it in a different light might help me make sense of it all. The library felt cool and still, a stark contrast to the atmosphere of my house. I found a corner table and spread out my materials. I flipped through the sketchbook again, studying each drawing closely. The figure in the dark room seemed to pulse with energy, like it wanted me to dig deeper. I felt a strange connection that I asked the librarian if there were any records about the house or the neighborhood's history. She raised an eyebrow but agreed to help me. As she pulled dusty books from the shelves, I could barely focus on her words. My mind returned to the attic, the whispers, the overwhelming feeling of being watched. After some searching, she handed me a thin volume on local folklore. I felt a spark of hope. Sitting back down, I flipped through the pages. It spoke of lost spirits and haunted homes. My heart raced as I read. One section mentioned a family who had lived in my house decades ago. They had mysteriously vanished, leaving only a few scattered belongings behind. I felt my stomach drop. That evening, back at the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I found myself avoiding the attic, but it called to me. The sketchbook lay on my desk like a silent accusation, urging me to confront whatever was stirring in me. As night fell, I decided to take a peek upstairs. The stairs creaked under my weight, and I hesitated at the attic door. I opened it slowly and was hit with a rush of cold air. The whispers were louder now, as if beckoning me closer. That I stepped inside and felt a rush of dread. There, on the floor, was an envelope I hadn't seen before. It was yellowed and dusty, like it had been there for years. I reached down to pick it up, my hands trembling. Inside, I found old photographs of the family from the book. Faces stared back at me, hollow and ghostly. I skimmed the back of each, searching for more details. But one particular photo sent chills down my spine. It looked just like the drawing in my sketchbook, the figure from the dark room, now in flesh and blood. Suddenly, the attic light flickered, and something cold brushed against my arm. I whipped around, gasping. My heart raced. That's when I saw it, an outline in the corner, a shadow that shouldn't have been there, quietly observing. Panic surged through me. What was happening? I caught my breath and reminded myself to stay calm. Yet, I felt trapped. I was crossing a line I didn't want to cross. Then, just like that, the outline vanished, leaving only a creeping silence in its wake. But the energy in the attic shifted. I knew I had uncovered something, but the fear in my gut told me it was far from finished. I was being drawn deeper into the mystery, and I had to know why. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread as I stepped back from the envelope. My hands were still trembling from the encounter. I forced myself to look over the photographs again. Each face seemed to hold a story that I wasn't privy to. The unease settled deep in my bones. I decided to leave the attic, but as I turned to exit, I heard the whispers again, soft but distinct. They seemed to rise and fall like a song only I could hear. "Help us," they begged. I wanted to dismiss it as paranoia, but there was a sincerity to the sighs that held me in place. Then, something caught my eye. In the faint light, I saw a corner of the floorboards look different, almost like they had been disturbed recently. I kneeled down, my heart pounding. My fingers brushed against the wood, and I realized it had a slight give. Fueled by a mix of fear and curiosity, I pried it up with little effort. Beneath the board lay a small, dusty box. It was old and ornate, covered in intricate carvings that mirrored some of the designs found in my sketchbook. I couldn't believe my luck. This could contain answers, maybe even a clue to the mystery I felt wrapped around my life. That I opened the box slowly. Inside, I found a collection of items, a tarnished key, a frayed necklace, and a small journal. The journal looked ancient, and my hands shook as I pulled it out. I flipped it open, revealing yellowed pages filled with tight, neat handwriting. On the third night, we heard the whispers return. I read aloud. My heart raced as the words sucked me in. It felt like a confession or a plea. The entries described strange occurrences, shadows lurking, voices calling, a sense of being watched. It sounded just like what I had been experiencing. Suddenly, the attic door slammed shut behind me. The sound echoed around me like a gunshot. I jumped, panic rising again. I rushed to the door, yanking at the handle. It wouldn't budge. I pounded on the wood, my mind racing. What was happening? Someone had to be playing a cruel joke on me. As I turned to search for another exit, I felt a cold breeze brush past me, whispering in my ear. It wasn't my imagination. This time, it felt deliberate. I could almost make out words through the rush of air. "Find us," it urged. My pulse quickened. I knew now it wasn't just about uncovering history. There was something more, some unfinished business that was binding me to this house. My understanding shifted from mere curiosity to a feeling of responsibility. I had to protect whatever was left behind. With renewed determination, I returned to the journal. I flipped through more pages, desperate to uncover what happened to the family. That's when I noticed a sketch tucked between the pages. It was a drawing of the sketchbook, with the same figure. But this time, the figure was reaching out, as if it was trying to break free. That's when I realized whatever was happening, it wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. My heart dropped, and I could almost feel the house breathe around me, urging me to dig deeper. I had to know what happened. I could feel it in my bones, I was destined to uncover the truth. I stumbled back, the journal still clutched tightly in my hands. My mind was racing, grappling with the weight of the revelations within those pages. The drawing seemed to pulse with a life of its own. I hesitated for a moment, listening to the silence that enveloped me, broken only by the faint whispers still echoing in the corners of the attic. "Find us." The words lingered in the air, and I couldn't ignore the urgency in them. With a shaky breath, I steeled myself and continued reading the journal. The entries told of family members going missing, one after the other. Despair gripped the pages, the handwriting becoming more erratic as if the author was succumbing to madness. They described dark figures lurking outside their windows, shadows taller than the house itself. Then, I noticed something I had missed earlier. There was a final note, hastily scrawled in the margin. "The key unlocks the past." My fingers brushed against the tarnished key resting in the box. A shiver ran down my spine. Was this why I was drawn to it? I stood up, my heart thumping loudly. I had to find out if the key worked. I scanned the attic for any locked boxes, doors, or even cabinets. The air felt thick with anticipation as I moved cautiously. As I searched, I heard a floorboard creak behind me. I whipped around, my breath caught in my throat. Nothing was there. Only shadows played tricks under the dim light. I pushed the fear aside and focused. My eyes landed on a small door in the corner of the attic. It was old and dusty with chains hanging loosely at the side. I took a few tentative steps toward it. Could this door be the entrance to whatever the journal hinted at? With trembling fingers, I inserted the key into the rusted lock. It felt cold against my skin as I turned it slowly, praying it would fit. To my surprise, the lock clicked open. I gasped, the noise piercing the stillness around me. Before I could second-guess myself, I pulled the door ajar, and a musty breeze greeted me. The darkness beyond was thick, suffocating. I stood at the threshold, every instinct in my body screaming that I shouldn't go through. But the whispers resumed, louder now. "Help us." I stepped into the darkness, the door creaking softly behind me as I crossed the threshold. I felt my way along the cold walls, heart pounding in my chest. The air was thick with a sense of urgency, but I couldn't turn back now. I was too far in. In the weak light filtering through, I saw more sketches on the walls, repeating the figure from my own sketchbook. Each one looked more frantic than the last. They seemed to be pointing towards something deeper within. That S when I saw it, a trapdoor at the end of the narrow hallway. My breath caught. I wasn't alone here, and whatever was waiting beneath that door was desperate to be released. As I reached for the handle, the whispers crescendoed, urging me on, then came a loud crash from behind. I spun around, heart racing. My pulse thundered in my ears as I realized I wasn't just uncovering secrets anymore. Someone or something was coming for me. I jolted at the sound, adrenaline coursing through me. My instincts screamed to run, but my feet felt rooted to the floor. I turned back to the trapdoor, my hand hovering over the handle, conflicted. Should I open it? Or should I escape back through the door I had just come from? The crashing noise grew louder, echoing in the narrow hallway. It felt as if whatever was behind me was getting closer. A chill ran down my spine, and I could taste the dust in the air. "Help us," the whispers pleaded again, more desperate now. My heart raced as I realized I was out of time. I gripped the handle of the trapdoor and yanked it open with a surge of energy. The hinges protested with an eerie groan, but I didn't care. I needed answers, and this was my chance to find them. Beneath the trapdoor was a set of stairs spiraling down into darkness. The whispers intensified, swirling around me like a tempest. Gathering my courage, I descended the steps one by one, each creak of the stair echoing loud in the confined space. The air turned colder the further I went, sending prickles down my arms. At the bottom, I was met with a small room, dimly lit by a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. The walls were covered in more drawings, and I recognized them instantly, images from the journal. The same dark figures skulked across the walls, their eyes hollow and searching. In the middle of the room lay a wooden table strewn with objects, broken toys, dusty trinkets, and the remnants of someone's life. A chill swept through me as I spotted a small box, similar to the one I had found in the attic. It looked ancient. I felt drawn to it, a magnet pulling me closer. Before I could reach out, a shattering noise erupted above me, shaking the floor. My head snapped upward, panic rising in my throat. I had to stay focused. Whatever was out there was now in the house, and I was trapped in here. Then I noticed a piece of paper half tucked beneath the box. I snatched it up, heart racing as I glimpsed the handwriting. It was frantic, another journal entry, perhaps. The first few words left me breathless. They took him. The shadows took him, and they'll come for you next. Suddenly, the temperature dropped even more. I could see my breath forming clouds in front of me. The whispers shifted into agonized wails, reverberating off the walls. I scrambled to place the box between me and the door, eyes darting to every corner, waiting for whatever thing was lurking to make itself known, and then there was a dark form slid into view at the top of the stairs. I froze, heart pounding in my ears. My breath caught again as it slowly descended the stairs, a twisted silhouette that seemed to absorb the light. The desperate cries echoed in my mind. Help us. Save us. I knew this wasn't just a mystery anymore. This was a nightmare, and I couldn't wake up. My instincts kicked in. I stumbled backward, hitting the wall just inches from the table. I held my breath and watched as the silhouette emerged from the darkness. It was a man, or at least what was left of one, his features twisted, a ghastly mask that barely resembled a human. The whispers had grown into a chorus of despair that filled the room, drowning out everything else. Help us, he rasped in a voice that felt like a cold knife slicing through my resolve. His eyes were sunken, filled with an anguish that went beyond desperation. I couldn't tell if he was alive or a mere echo of anguish trapped by the shadows. That I had a decision to make. I could stay frozen in fear or act. The memories of the journal flooded my thoughts. Whatever this was, it was tied to the box and the drawings. I couldn't back away now. I had to confront this horror, needed to understand. That I grabbed the box, clutching it tightly. It felt warm against my cold palms, almost alive. Maybe it held the answers I was searching for, or perhaps the key to shutting this nightmare down. What do you want? I shouted, forcing my voice to break through the tumult of cries. At that moment, my words seemed to amplify the darkness. The figure winced, its twisted form jerking as if fighting against some invisible force. I knew it felt that my question had power. The atmosphere shifted, a current of unseen energy crackling between us. Free us, it moaned. The sound clawed at my ears, each word a plea that resonated deep within me. My heart was hammering, and I realized I had a choice: help it, or let it fade back into the shadows, whatever that meant. Tell me how. I demanded, urgency rising in my chest. The box trembled slightly in my grip, almost as if responding to my call. The anguished figure seemed to grow clearer, just for a moment. I saw flickers of a life, a child, a family, before darkness swallowed him whole again. Suddenly, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Another figure emerged. I turned just in time to see another of those dark forms, creeping along the edge of the room, watching me with hollow eyes. They were not just shadows, they were memories, lost souls yearning to be released. Panic gripped me, but I couldn't turn away. What do you want from me? I repeated, my voice quaking. Then I felt a surge of cold air rushing past me. The other figure vanished, absorbed into the darkness, and I was left with the original apparition. The paper I had found earlier slipped from my grip, fluttering to the ground. It had more information, something crucial. I scrambled to pick it up, hoping it could shed light on this haunting. But before I could read, the chilling whispers crescendoed, drowning out my thoughts. Help us. They cried, louder than before, and I realized it was now or never. If I didn't act, I would lose the chance to save them or myself. That I took a deep breath and opened the old box. Inside, darkness swirled, and I was met with a glimmering object, a key. It sparked with a strange light, a beacon amidst the shadows. But as I clutched it, everything went dark. I gasped as the darkness enveloped me. It felt like falling into an endless void. Cold seeped into my bones, and I couldn't tell which way was up. Panic washed over me. I fought against it, desperate for light. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the darkness receded, and I found myself back in the room, knees on the floor, breathing hard. The key was still in my hand, pulsating with a faint glow. I blinked at the man, no, the figure before me, half expecting it to vanish again. But he remained, staring at me with eyes that begged for release. What do I do? I whispered, heart racing. I could barely hear my own voice over the whispers still echoing around me, growing softer but no less urgent. The figure raised a hand, pointing toward the wall behind him. It was then I noticed the drawing's strange, twisted images that danced in and out of the shadows. They seemed to pulse, mirroring the key's glow. I scrambled closer, feeling drawn to them. My skin prickled with a mix of fear and curiosity. Each drawing told a story. I could almost see the lives they depicted: lost children, a mother searching, a father reaching out, their faces contorted in anguish. Why are you showing me this? I asked, looking back at the figure. Remember, he rasped. Free us, I swallowed hard. What did remembering mean? I glanced back at the key in my hand. Could it unlock something? The answers felt frustratingly close, yet just out of reach. As I knelt there, something caught my eye across the room. It was a dark shape crawling into the light. The other figure, the one that had slipped into the shadows before, was back. I stumbled to my feet, heart hammering in my chest. I didn't want to confront another entity, not when the first one filled me with such dread, but it was already moving towards me, its features shifting, growing clearer. I could see it was more of a person now, a woman, her face twisted with pain. I could feel my legs tremble, but I couldn't let fear paralyze me this time. Help us! She cried, echoing the earlier plea but now tinged with despair. I can't help anyone until you tell me how. I shouted, desperation wrapping around my words. The key in my hand felt heavier, a weight I couldn't fully comprehend. The woman pointed to the center of the room. I followed her gaze and saw a circle drawn into the floor, etched with symbols that filled me with unease. What does this mean? I asked the haunting figures, but they stayed silent as the whispers crescendoed again. Suddenly, the air shifted. The key flickered in my palm and then shot forward, glowing fiercely. I felt something pull at my heart, a mix of fear and resolve. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I couldn't let the shadows claim me. When I saw it, the circle on the floor began to glow brighter. The room trembled with energy, and I braced myself. The whispers peaked into a deafening roar, drowning everything out until I was surrounded by blinding light. Everything I thought I knew was about to unravel. And that terrified me. I squinted against the blinding light, my heart pounding in sync with the rising hum around me. The world faded into a blur of colors before snapping back into focus. I was still in the room, but everything felt different. The shadows seemed to retract against the walls, and the whispers quieted to a faint sigh. In the center of the glowing circle, the symbols began to shimmer. They looked like ancient letters, swirling and twisting into shapes I couldn't decipher. A wave of understanding washed over me, but I was still tethered to confusion. The figures were still there, staring with desperate eyes. The woman pointed urgently at the circle. You must complete the ritual, she urged, her voice trembling. It's the only way to break the cycle. Ritual? I echoed, every inch of me on high alert. What do I need to do? Before she could answer, the light flared again, and a new presence filled the space. I turned to see a shadow loom larger than life, darker than any of the other figures. It pulsed with anger, its form shifting violently, barely human. No! The woman screamed, but her warning was drowned out by the figure's growl. I felt a primal fear grip my chest. The key in my hand grew unbearably hot, as if it recognized the new threat. I took a step back, ready to flee. But there was nowhere to go. The wall behind me felt solid and unyielding, trapping me in this nightmare. What do I do? I whimpered, feeling pinned under the weight of the shadow's gaze. Use it. The man's voice cut through the panic, clear and steady. Unlock the truth. Unlock the truth. My mind raced, remembering the drawings. They were pieces of a puzzle. If the key could reveal something hidden, maybe it could push back the looming threat. I took a deep breath, summoning my courage that I stepped forward toward the circle, clutching the key tightly. Each step felt like wading through thick mud, but the glow intensified with each move. I knelt, my fingers trembling as I hovered the key over the symbols. An electric rush coursed through me. As the key touched the surface, the symbols ignited, responding with a brilliant flash. I gasped as energy surged into my veins, visions flash flooding into my mind. I saw a family, years of happiness, followed by darkness and despair. I saw the woman, searching endlessly, her eyes hollow with grief, the angry figure writhed, enraged by the illumination. You cannot free them. It shrieked, its voice like thunder. Ignoring it, I pressed the key down, willing it to reveal the truth behind the symbols. The ground shook beneath me, a ripple of energy driving me further into the light. The whispers escalated into a cacophony of voices, each one distinct but harmonized in a shared struggle. Release us. They called, their collective sorrow crashing over me. Then, everything went still. A sudden calm settled, and the blinding light dimmed, revealing something unexpected within the circle. A small wooden box lay nestled there, intricately carved and untouched by the chaos surrounding it. I felt my breath hitch, the moment heavy with uncertainty. What is this? I murmured, inexplicably drawn toward it, knowing that whatever it held could change everything. My hands moved to open it, but just before I could lift the lid, the dark figure lunged forward, shrieking. No! I barely had time to react before the shadow was upon me. It surged forward, a wave of darkness that swallowed the air and made my heartbeat hammer in my ears. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I was frozen, hands still hovering above the box. Stop! I yelled, the word barely escaping my lips. The figure hesitated, its form flickering like a faulty light bulb, as if my shout had created a small crack in its relentless fury. I needed to push it back, to break free from its menacing hold. The box felt alive under my fingers, a warmth radiating from it. Could it protect me? With new resolve, I pressed both hands against its lid. Whatever you are, help me. Suddenly, the box trembled, the wood vibrating as if responding to my plea. The dark figure recoiled, letting out a guttural roar that shook the room. I felt the energy shift, a current of fear and anger clashing against the pulsing warmth of the box. Open it. The woman's voice called out, now accompanied by the man's steady insistence. You must uncover what's inside. Before I could think better of it, I lifted the lid. The hinges creaked as the light inside spilled out, illuminating the darkness and revealing intricate symbols carved into the center of the box. They mirrored the ones glowing on the floor, completing the circle I had only begun to understand. The moment it opened, a rush of air swept through the room, lifting the shadows. I caught my breath as the angry figure wailed, its form flickering like a candle about to go out. The whispers grew clearer, forming words that swirled around me. We are trapped, we exist, break the curse. With each word, I felt their urgency weighing heavy on my shoulders. I needed to find a way to help them, but what did this all mean? How was I meant to break a curse that felt so beyond my understanding? I stared down at the box, my heart racing. Inside lay a small, delicate mirror. As I picked it up, something deep inside me resonated. It felt like a connection, a thread linking me to the past. Through the glass, I saw not only my reflection but also fleeting images behind me, the family again, their joy overridden by darkness. Then I noticed something else. A flicker of recognition in the background of those memories, a faded photograph on the wall. Someone was there, a face partially obscured, but the essence was familiar. I needed to see more. The dark figure lunged again, but this time I was ready. I raised the mirror like a shield, its surface catching the dim light, and as I did, I called out, "Show me." The mirror flashed, bathing the room in a blinding light. The shadow screamed, a deafening sound that pierced through the chaos, and for a moment, strangely, I felt at peace. But then the light flickered. The mirror trembled in my hand as I struggled to harness its power. That I needed to hold on, needed to understand what this meant. Just when I thought I was about to break through, the glow began to fade, the dark figure blurring back into focus. "You cannot escape." It shrieked, rage palpable. Fear settled in my stomach. I had only just unlocked this truth, and already it was slipping away. I gasped, "What do you want from me?" My voice trembled, but I was determined. I could do this. Then the shadows shifted again. Something new emerged behind the dark figure, a flickering light that promised answers but also danger. I wasn't alone in this, but what would it cost me? "Help me!" I shouted again, as hope collided with fear. The only way forward was to confront this chaos head-on. As the dark figure loomed, I felt time stretch, every second hanging heavy with uncertainty. The mirror in my hands pulsed with warmth and urgency, and I knew it was my only chance. With trembling resolve, I directed its surface toward the dark entity. If I could catch a glimpse of the truth, perhaps I could finally free those trapped spirits. "Show me what I need to see," I shouted, willing the mirror to reveal the secrets hidden within the shadows. A brilliant light erupted, flooding the room with blinding clarity. The whispers grew louder, resonating with the cries of those who had come before me. Suddenly, a vision washed over me. I found myself in a warm, sunlit room, surrounded by joyous laughter and love, a family gathering. But then, darker figures began to creep in, shadows lurking just outside the light. They moved closer, stretching out their claw-like fingers, pulling the happiness away. I could see it happening, a child reaching for their parent, only to be yanked back into the darkness. "No!" I shouted, tears blurring my vision as I watched their anguish unfold. The mirror trembled in my grasp. "Please, I won't let this happen." With each revelation, I noticed the details from my own drawings. It was as if my past and the family's were intertwined, echoing through time. I remembered my notes from the library, the stories of the vanished family. This was their story, trapped in the cycle of despair and darkness. And somehow, I was woven into it, a reluctant bridge linking their history to my present. The dark figure screamed, its rage unfurling in waves. "You will not break the cycle." But I felt different now, emboldened by the truth. "No, I will end it," I declared, feeling the mirror guiding me toward a resolution I could barely grasp. I pressed the glass against the floor, where the circle of symbols glowed faintly beneath me. "By acknowledging the past, I give you a choice." As I sank to my knees, I knew what needed to be done. I needed to offer those shadows a path forward, a chance to heal and be released from the binds of their sorrow. "You do not have to remain in this darkness. I am here to help you find peace." The light from the mirror intensified, wrapping around me like a warm embrace. I felt a tug, a pull that came from both sides of the veil between the living and the lost, and I knew I was at the center of a convergence, a point of healing that could reclaim the past. The dark figure recoiled as the energy surged, its shadow flickering. I could feel the spirits gathering around me, their whispers morphing into a chorus of hope. "Thank you. Free us," they cried, their voices intertwining with mine. As the dark form writhed in agony, I saw remnants of the family took shape, the mother, the father, their hopes intertwined with mine. They flickered like dying embers, but in that moment, I saw their faces clearly. A moment of clarity passed between us, a mutual acknowledgement of suffering and a longing for release. That I knew there was a risk, but I had to trust that I could harness this energy for good. I lifted the mirror higher, holding it against the swirling darkness. "Find the light within. Let this darkness melt away." The shadows howled, and with one final surge of energy, there was silence. Then, in an instant, I was alone that I blinked, and the room felt still. The bright glow of the mirror dimmed, throwing me back into the quiet of the space. Everything was significantly less chaotic. There were no shadows, no anguished wails, only a faint echo in the air. Heart racing, I clutched the mirror, now a simple reflection of me. But there was no sign of the dark figure, no feeling of fear or dread pressing down on my chest. Instead, I felt an unsuspecting quiet settling over me, as if the air had cleared, but as I tried to comprehend the aftermath of my actions, questions remained. Had I truly freed them? Or had I just pushed them into another realm? I glanced around the room, feeling the weight of the stillness. I couldn't shake the sensation that the shadows were not entirely gone. There were remnants of their pain inside me. Haunting echoes lingering beneath the surface, just waiting to resurface. That I finally stood, the mirror slipping gently from my fingers onto the floor. I might have succeeded in breaking the cycle, but I couldn't forget that what lurked in the dark could always return. An unease settled in my mind as I climbed back up the spiral stairs. After leaving the attic, I stepped into the fading light outside, breathing in the crisp air for the first time in what felt like ages. The house loomed behind me, filled with its secrets and history. I had hoped to find closure, but instead, I left with lingering questions, a heavy heart, and the unsettling feeling that not all spirits were meant to be set free, or that perhaps this journey would impact more than just the past. That I moved to a different city after that. Sometimes I wonder if those shadows still linger, waiting quietly like old memories. But mostly, I try not to think about it.